What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Accolonn here, and of course, welcome back to each and every one of you. It is Wednesday morning, and there's some crazy news that dropped late last night, although I was asleep already when this news came out. This is something that I've been asking for a long time. I think the player base has been asking for this for a really long time, and it is a complete overhaul of the Mythic Plus system. Now, I have said in the past, right, that the problem that I have with Mythic Plus is that from a game design perspective, I completely understand what Blizzard wants to achieve. They want to make it harder and therefore, really entice sort of like the hardcore player base to get in there and achieve the completion of it in order to unlock greater rewards. The problem, however, from a player perspective or the experience of players is that it feels crap. Because no one likes a design system where the only real change is massive punishments to you trying to play the game. For example, the old Mythic Plus system would sometimes have weeks that would just be unplayable, where no one wants to go in because the punishments are just too great. The other problem also is when you do the affixes perfectly and you avoid all of the damage and all of the extra stuff that happens, you don't gain anything from that. You just sort of skip the punishment. That's not a reward in and of itself, and it doesn't feel good to play that way. Blizzard, seemingly in the War Within, has taken note, and they have finally let this go. It was a while ago, it was probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 years ago, where Ian was asked this very question, affixes that would have upside, so basically a trick-or-treat system, and Ian basically said, nah, that's not what they want to do. The whole point of the affix system in Mythic Plus is that it needs to be hard. It needs to be an engaging and hard experience for the hardcore player base. The issue, of course, is that over the course of many, many years, we have seen Mythic Plus go down in popularity. It's not dead, don't get me wrong, but it is going down in popularity because as the game became more and more difficult, more and more complex, and a lot of the Mythic Plus systems were sort of amped up to their max, what we saw wasn't an increase in player numbers, more people taking up dungeons. What we saw was actually a decrease in that. And every single time Blizzard would sort of relax the rules, more people would start to jump in. And I think the success of this is clear. People, even if you look at the success of Classic WoW, and I know a lot of people that play Classic don't necessarily play Retail, and a lot of Retail Andes don't like Classic Andes. I get that, guys. I'm with you. I prefer Retail over Classic. But the success of Classic suggests that there are a large number of players that like the simplicity of going in and understanding exactly what's going to happen here and knowing that when they defeat this, they're going to get some loot and it's going to be super fun, right? And yeah, that is a little boring after a while, and this is why the Mythic Plus system has such promise, but not the way it is currently done. But I think in War Within, you guys will be with me when I say it's gonna be good. So there's a couple of ones that's completely being removed from the game. Sanguine, Bolstering, Raging, and Bursting are removed. They're taking those out of the system. Then they're also sort of reworking quite a few of them, like Reckless, Focused, Attuned, and Thorned. These are either going to be completely reworked, but they're not currently available from what I understand, because Blizzard is still sort of working around these. Instead, it's going to change quite substantially from what it used to be. So now players will actually, when they enter a dungeon in Mythic Plus from +2, Xalatath herself will join the dungeon. But she will come with bargains. One of the bargains will be an active bargain, and the other one will be a non-active one, so a passive one. Non-active, what the hell am I talking about? But it will be a passive one. So the active bargain will actually have these orbs that drop from the ceiling. And if the mobs absorb these orbs, they gain effects like increased movement speed and increased haste. But if the players disrupt these orbs, so I imagine if the player stands under it instead and gets hit by it, then the player gets increased haste and movement speed. You see, this is the example that I've been giving for such a long time. An affix that if you do it wrong, the mobs get harder. If you do it right, you hit harder. That's perfect, right? Trick or treat, it's perfect because it rewards good gameplay and it punishes bad gameplay without just being a punishment all across the board. And then the other one is called Xalatath's Bargain, which is Frenzied, where non-boss enemies become frenzied at 30% health remaining, increasing their haste by 40%, but your damage is also increased by 20% to those targets. So basically then it just becomes a nuke it down as quickly as possible, save all of your cooldowns for when the mobs hit that 20% mark, and then just nuke them down. So then once you get to +7 keystones, this is where Challenger's Peril will be introduced into it as well, which will directly affect the dungeon timer. So what I also like about this is it gives very casual mid-core players, sort of, from Mythic +1 up to Mythic +7, really an opportunity to play the game and enjoy the game without having to become too hardcore. Once you hit +7, though, this is where things get a little bit more hardcore. So now, whenever you die, instead of just losing 5 seconds, you lose 15 seconds off of the timer, which I think is important. You need to make it more difficult. You need to increase that difficulty some way, somehow. But then, and this is where things get really cool, once you hit +12, all of the bargains and the affixes from Xalatath, the orbs that's dropping and the 20% increased damage under a certain under 30% health, all of that disappears. And instead, Xalatath just grants all of the enemies 20% health, 20% damage per level, going up from there, which I think is awesome. It means that for those players that really want to push at the highest possible level, they will be dealing with a 15-second death timer, or death penalty, as well as 20% increased damage and health on all enemies within the dungeon, going from +12 and up. So basically, you're now getting the core dungeon experience. No orbs, no unnecessary stuff, but you'll still be dealing with Fortified and Tyrannical. So Fortified and Tyrannical will be introduced. You have Xalatath's Bargain, you can see it on your screen here, at 2, Xalatath's Bargain. At level 4, Fortified will be applied to the dungeon. Now, the fact that there is an asterisk next to this Fortified suggests that it will probably be a Fortified that isn't the ultimate Fortified. So it's not Fortified in its fullness. It's maybe like a bit of a watered-down version of Fortified. And then, of course, you will have Challenger's Peril that's introduced at 7. Then at level 10, you'll have Tyrannical be introduced to it. Right, so this is now you're dealing with Fortified and Tyrannical at 10, and then at 12 you'll deal with Fortified and Tyrannical as well as Xalatath's Guile, right, which is now just a normal dungeon, but a hell of a lot harder, which I think is perfect, right? It really gives the hardcore player base something to push for without having to deal with on and off weeks, where some weeks the specific rotation of affixes just doesn't work. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I will be honest with you, there's more explanation here, but Blizzard is also looking at dungeon scores and how they're going to be evaluating the dungeon scores under this new system. Personally, I think I speak for most people when I say this is an incredibly welcome change, because this gives clear breakpoints between the different types of player bases that might be engaged in the system. For me, personally, I'll probably go up to +6, maybe even a +7 if I really feel like it, and I'll have a lot of fun. I'll have a lot of fun playing around with Xalatath's bargains, and of course, these are only the first bargains. There's going to be other bargains, so every week we'll have a different one. So for players that's mid-core and really just enjoy the experience, yeah, every week we'll have something new to look forward to, some new trick-or-treat system that Xalatath grants us, and the dungeons at +1 to +7 aren't really that hard to the point where it would be unplayable depending on the bargains that Xalatath gives. The fact that it then disables at +12 suggests that from Blizzard's perspective, they're now truly giving the player base an experience where you know exactly what you're going to get. Every week is push week because every week is exactly the same. There are no bargains that you have to deal with. It's a 20% increase to damage and health from all enemies, as well as the increases that are already baked in to the Mythic Plus system. So yeah, eventually you're just going to hit a hard wall where these enemies hit way too hard, or you're going to need a lot of cooldowns, which I think preserves the core experience of dungeons. Never forget that this is something that I think we've had a lot of conversations about. Dungeons are cool, and Blizzard goes through a hell of a lot of effort to make these dungeons engaging, to give players something to experience that aren't necessarily going to be raiding. The problem with Mythic Plus in the old system is that in many ways, the dungeon itself became largely irrelevant. And it was all about the affixes. It was all about, what are the affixes this week? Can I even do this dungeon with these affixes? That's not a great way to play. Whereas now, the new system really celebrates the dungeons. It celebrates what the dungeons bring, the mechanics, and having to pay attention to what those mechanics do. Because with 20% increased damage and health, those mechanics become really important. I may actually even push a couple of plus 12 keys just to see that experience, because you're finally going to get into a more almost raiding-esque or raiding-light experience in dungeons, which I think is really cool. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the system. Personally, I think the War Within is just delivering every single week something new. It gets exhausting, really, to be a WoW player nowadays, because it's just like Blizzard goes, oh, you guys want even cooler stuff? Here's even cooler stuff. And we're already sold. We're already buying it. We're going to be playing. Blizzard's like, no, just another cookie. And you go, but I already have all of these other cookies. And they're like, no, take another cookie. And you're like, okay, I'll have another cookie. It's very, very difficult to go on a diet if you're a World of Warcraft fan, because Blizzard is just dealing cookies, and it is good. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comment section down below. Hit the like if you liked, dislike if you didn't. If you're a patron, thank you so much. If you want to become a patron, $1 a month helps you keep this channel free from sponsorships that want to sell you stuff that you do not need. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be good to each other. Be kind to each other. And I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.